You can't force core values on someone. It doesn't work.
It's the gray area when you're trying to sell around your core values or when you don't have core values that makes decisions hard.
It makes it a quantitative and almost easy decision when we're bringing people on or when we have to let them go.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today in our Real MF'er series. I'm excited to bring back one of our guests from our past webinars and someone I've really developed a good friendship with here on LinkedIn, and we've talked now several times. Matt Better, he is the Vice President at Schafer Construction. Welcome.
Scott, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. Glad to be back.
Me too, man. I've been, ever since you and I started connecting back and forth and shooting some messages and commenting on posts, I enjoyed the things you put out. I thought it was really cool in the way you kind of bent around some of the norms in the construction space. And so I was really excited to get you onto our webinar series, but I have some cool ideas for the way I wanted to roll with this one. I think you're going to offer some cool perspectives. So I'm excited to get to it.
Yeah. And likewise, I've been following you for quite a while now. So it's good to connect on a more personal level.
Yes. And for those of you that happen to know or be in the Arte Syndicate, Matt and I talked for a while back and forth before we even knew that, which it was no surprise to me afterwards that he was in that, because since both of us had talked about that. So anyways, couple things, Matt, what would be great is, do you mind giving a little bit about your story, how you ended up through Schafer Construction, your background? I mean, you have more than 2 decades of experience in the construction space from all levels, from what it looks like. I mean, you've been in from the ground floor of construction all the way up through different project manager levels and ultimately to where you are today. Talk a little bit about that. Just give us the kind of 30,000 foot view for everybody.
Yeah. So I got my start when I was 18-ish. I joined a residential framing crew, really, essentially. And I was hauling lumber around job sites. My family was never involved in construction. I had a buddy that turned me on to that job. And to be quite candid with you, it was just good money. It was, X number of dollars an hour under the table. And as a kid that age, you couldn't beat it. So that's really selfishly how I got into the construction industry, period. Because of that under the table scenario, that worked out well for a couple of years, but I kind of realized as I was getting a bit older that things needed to be a little bit more legitimate than that. So that led to me starting my first company, which was a carpentry outfit. And we kind of subcontracted right back to the guy that I'd been working with. Over some years that morphed into me taking on more of an ownership role and leading and grabbing and selling my own projects. And we did that. I was doing a lot of decks and garages, finished basements, things along that lines. And we were working for primarily auto executives in the Metro Detroit market. And again, at that time, we were doing $100,000, $200,000 basement remodels, and it was great. It was fun. I had, absolute control over everything. So I learned a lot. I kind of cut my teeth as I went. Fast forward to really 2007, and the auto industry, at least around here, it was like they knew it was coming. And all of a sudden that money that was just flying out the door for discretionary spending, like a finished basement, well, that dried up real fast. And I was presented with an opportunity to kind of shift gears and shift out of the residential realm and into the commercial. And I took it. I started another company then, basically providing what I called construction consulting. So I would do estimating, supervision, project management for hire. And I would travel all over the country doing that. I did that for 7 to 10 years. I don't remember the exact dates. As my family was growing, that lifestyle just became harder and harder and harder. I've got 3 boys now. At the time I only had 1, but that was hard enough. So put roots back here in Southeastern Michigan, took a job locally with a large general contractor and was quickly running their pre-con department. Was there for a while and realized again that frankly, I don't like working for someone else. Call it my ego, call it, I wanted skin in the game. I'm not sure what all to call it, but So I left there. I came on as a partner at Schafer Construction almost 4 years ago to the day, actually.
Cool.
We're a smaller scale commercial design build general contractor. We're based in Brighton, Michigan, which is about 45 minutes northwest of Detroit. And yeah, I mean that's my story. It's been a wild ride, and it continues to be a lot of fun every day.
That's awesome, man. And what did, one of the things I really love that you talk a lot about is teamwork in construction. And I know you've focused a lot on that in the things you talk about, but bring inside your own company. Is that something that you brought to the company, something that was already there that attracted you to it? Talk a little bit about your feelings around teamwork and how and why it's so important and what you do about it inside Schafer.
That's kind of a multi-pronged question. So let me kind of pick it apart. As far as teamwork goes, it is our company. It is the only thing that makes Schafer Construction. Was it there before I came? Probably. We were a much smaller outfit. We're still fairly small. There's 6 of us in total. When I started, there was 2, the owner and an office manager. So teamwork was always there, but I don't think it was vocalized quite as much. I yell and scream a lot and post all kinds of things on social media. So I think I brought that aspect to it, but the basic core values were there. They just weren't quite as well defined as they may be now.
How do you think your approach to team building has really led to your success? Or, some people might say only 6 of you, but there's really going from 2 to 6 is really 300% growth.
It's core values, 100%. And, I've talked about this a lot on my own podcast. I talk about it in our meetings. I've been interviewed about it before. It's not, it sounds cliche, but it's not. It truly is the most important part of what we do. And that reliance on our core values has really made it almost roadmapped how to grow our team from 2 to where we are today and moving forward into the future.
So one interesting thing that I think is a challenge that might be a little more unique to construction is, you can establish culture, and team building is hard enough within your own organization. And it takes a lot of work over a long period of time, typically. And you can control which people you bring inside your own organization. When you're managing a construction project and you're the general contractor, you have a lot of people moving inside of that project. And there's a lot of people in one confined area. And I always look at what is the culture of that project? What's the culture of the site? And, you can really dictate a lot of that, good or bad. How do you take the stuff that you do inside Schafer and bring that onto the site too, so that everyone that you're working with, vendors, subcontractors, and your own team and employees can share those same team building and core values?
So it is tough. But I don't want to swear too much, but basically we don't hire assholes. And while all of our subs and all of our suppliers, they may not share every single one of our core values, they're all pretty darn close. And, we've worked with our team, as I call it, our team expands far beyond the walls of Schafer Construction. Our team is every single subcontractor partner we have on jobs, every supplier, every vendor, really every client at the end of the day. We're all part of this moving organism that is the construction project. So, we've known and we've worked with a lot of our guys, our team for 20 plus years. So we have very good relationships. We know what their values are. And it just comes down to that. If your values as a sub or as a vendor or whoever, or even as a prospective client, if they are diametrically opposed to our values, it's not going to work. The relationship will never foster, and we just don't get involved in that. So it's tough to kind of herd everyone on a job site, and when you have hundreds of people running around. But at least at the upper levels of the companies that we team and we partner with, all of our values are close enough that we mesh pretty well together.
That's cool. Yeah, I could see that being a challenge, and I hear about it from both sides. You're trying to there's conflict resolution. How do you handle that? Setting up structures and systems on the project to get that out in the open. I can definitely see how that could be tough to do.
Yeah, and it's in construction. There's conflicts every single day. Nothing ever goes 100% according to plan. But it comes down to how you handle it as a leader, as an individual, as any team member on our project. You have to have constructive criticism. You have to be able to take a tongue lashing once in a while from all different directions. I get it as a owner, as a GC. Once in a while, we have to unleash it on someone else, but we all have a very intense mutual respect for everyone on our site. And it allows us to function as well as we do, as efficiently as we are, and it keeps us whole, if that makes any sense.
It does. All right. I'm going to switch to culture for a second now, too. All right. Okay. Matt, one of the other things I've always been impressed with is your focus on culture. We talked a little bit about teamwork previously, but can you talk a little different? Tell us the differences in your mind, what the difference between culture is and teamwork or team building.
Culture is what's inside you, right? As a person, but also as an organization. Schafer Construction is much bigger than a logo or just a namesake. So the culture we build, you don't necessarily have to have it when you join our team. You have to have our core values. You have to match those, but the culture we build is something that you can generate, something that you can grow into, and you as a team member, frankly, help to build and to foster that culture. So I think you can't have a team without having a culture first. And that team helps to then grow that culture even more. And I know that's a really roundabout way of answering it, but that's truly how we kind of approach it.
Well, one of the things I noticed that you talked about before and you have a focus on it, you guys, aside from focusing strongly on your core values, which I certainly resonate and understand with, you talk a lot about one of your core values is having 100-0 mindset. Tell me a little bit about what that means to you and how you've instilled that into your team and how your team takes that mindset, what it means, and then uses it or brings it out to the field. What is that?
So 100-0 is a concept that I heard first from Andy Frisella. And we took it as a core value to be, when we approach anything, once we as a leadership level decide to go after a project, let's say, we are going to burn the ships. There is no turning back. Our mindset is that we are going to win. We're going to succeed. We're going to beat whoever we're proverbially playing against 100-0, 100-0, no questions asked. And it's this attitude of aggressive impatience that I really push hard on our team. And it's not a bad thing. A lot of people get kind of taken aback when they hear those two words used together. And it's not at all meant to be a negative. We have to have an impatience about everything we do. There has to be a pace that we keep, and we have to aggressively pursue our goals, because we're not the only guys on the block that can stick a building up in the air. There's a lot of competition, especially around Southeast Michigan here where we operate. So we have to be able to run full speed from the day we sign a contract, let's say, to the day we hand over the keys. And if we can't, we're doing something wrong. So that's 100-0 in a nutshell. It's that aggressive impatience, burn the ships mentality. There is no plan B. Okay.
That's cool. I like that. One other thing I was going to ask you is you take your core values now and you have them instilled into your they're not instilled, they're on your website, they're prominent in your organization. You talked about how you utilize them to create a mindset and an approach. How else, or is there other ways that you've used those core values and really put them into your team in a systematic or process-driven way that maybe others that are watching this now could say, oh, it's a great idea. I have this great idea that I really believe we're all about, but I don't know how to put it into the team. Is there a way that you maybe took some of your core values and really drove them in, other than just putting them on the wall, putting them on the website? That's the easy part, I guess.
We I talk about them constantly with all of our team. We meet, depending on different levels in our organization, we meet weekly, and we always harp on our core values. We talk about them, we cast that vision, we throw it out in front of our people constantly. It's on our marketing fodder that we put out. It's on our internal communications that we use amongst ourselves. We submit our core values in our proposals now. We also review our employees and ourselves we're supposed to do it quarterly, but we slack, and it usually happens only twice a year. But our employee reviews are focused largely around our core values. And so it really just helps to foster the importance and also just the magnitude of what they represent to us.
That's cool. It's good. I think one of the challenges I had and still struggle with sometimes is just bringing that culture into our everyday. And we've made amazing strides at it. And actually, I don't think it's an issue anymore. I think it's very evident now. But as I think back over a 4 or 5 year period, and for those of you that are listening, it took maybe 3 years, 4 years, and different iterations and different things we tried to do. And quite frankly, it took cycling our team twice, every position almost, before we actually had the right team to have the right culture to then use it and be what we are. So it's not a quick, fast process. It's certainly not one meeting. And I think, Matt, you hit the nail on the head. It's something you work on and you evolve to, and you build it into everything you do, including your, especially your incentive plans, and especially the way you evaluate and hire, and of course, fire too.
It has to be. It has to be how you guide your company. And the tricky thing about it is you can't force core values on someone, right? You as a leader, or you and your partners, however it's structured, you have to find values that are that you all mutually have and share. You can't bring in new people and say, hey, you're going to represent 100-0 mentality. It doesn't work. So it's a long process. And we went through the same thing. Like I mentioned, I've been here for 4 years. We're just now at a point where we are growing our team based only on those core values. We hire based on them, we fire based on them. And it makes it a quantitative and almost easy decision when we're bringing people on or when we have to let them go.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing, and it's a lot of fun at the same time. The coolest part I will tell you, from my own perspective, is once you get the core values in place, it actually makes your job and decision making really easy, because you just look at those core values and the answer is black and white. It's the gray area when you're trying to sell around your core values, or when you don't have core values, that makes decisions hard, in my opinion. So that is the, what's it called, silver lining, I guess, in the process.
Absolutely. And you mentioned trying to sell it you can't sell it to yourself. And once you learn that as a leader, especially, that it's either yes or no. You can't force it. You can't mend it if the person doesn't have it. It doesn't make the person a bad person. They're not going to, wind up homeless with no friends because they don't represent your core values. They just don't fit on your team.
Yeah, true. All right, Matt, I want to try a new concept that I've been thinking about. We've been calling it Ask the GC. We get questions all the time, and I can offer my best perspective, but the truth is I'm not a general contractor, and I can try my best to play one, but I figured you'd be a great person to obviously ask these questions to. So I'm going to I came up with 4 or 5 questions here that are the common things that I hear quite a bit. Some of them came from the webinar that we actually had. And I kind of want to just shoot these off to you in a quick fashion, and you kind of give me a quick answer, and we'll get some of this out.
You cool. Got it. Let's go.
All right. What's more important, performance or price?
From a subcontractor, I assume you mean?
Yeah, all these questions are from a subcontractor perspective. So the genesis of that was more from a bidding perspective. I'm submitting a bid. I want it. What do you care more about?
So here's the way I look at it. We in the construction industry, we do not set pricing, period. We simply collect what the market is putting out there. And we all charge different fees. Subs charge different fees. There's different markups. I get that. But for any given project, pricing shouldn't swing very widely throughout different trades, throughout even different GCs. So as long as it's not wildly out of line, the price that is, I will always fall back on performance, and I'm going to one up that on relationship, because that's how we build effectively.
Follow up to that. In your mind's eye, what is that range of pricing? Is it a couple percentage points? Is it double-digit percentage points? What is that range that someone should be in, or the range before you think they're too high or too low?
I'm giving away all my secrets here, but I think if you're within 10% of each other, in my mind, that's basically the same number. And, we don't do well in low bid work. And this is why. And it's not because we're overpriced, but I don't like that mentality that it breeds. So I would much rather go to bat for a carpenter, let's say that I know, like, and trust. I'll go to bat to an owner and say, yeah, he may be 10% higher. He may be 15% higher, but I know the performance will be there. I can stand behind this guy or this company, and I can look you in the eye and guarantee you that the results we're going to produce are exactly what I'm telling you we will today.
All right. Question number 2. Why don't you pay me faster?
Because that's the shitty reality of our industry. And I recognize it. We as general contractors, we basically force our subs to act as a bank sometimes. We at Schafer Construction, we push very, very hard to force 15-day net terms with all of our contracts to our clients. When we are able to do that, which is most of them, frankly, we're able to pay our subs and our vendors within a 20 to 30 day window from the day they submit their invoice. And that's our goal. So the way I look at it is, if you as a sub have your suppliers and you've already built those relationships, you're going to have payment terms with them. We may or may not know what they actually are, but typically speaking, you get at least 30 days, typically. So if I can get you paid in 30 days from when you send me an invoice, I feel like I'm at least doing my part to lessen that burden on you as a sub to be my bank.
Fair enough. Good. And by the way, I think from my experience or conversations, I would say any time that someone can get paid within 20 to 30 days would be much more the good and not the norm. So I think that would be very favorable. All right. In line with the last question, but different, is, so you're the big company. Why do you make me wait? If you get paid or you don't get paid in 20 or 30 days, why don't you just pay me within 20 or 30 days anyways?
That's an easy one for our case. We're not the big company. You are. Typically, our subs are far bigger companies than we are. On the flip side to that, I also recognize the intent of the question, and we do have credit lines of our own that, when needed, and usually it's a gut check call, right? If something goes wrong and we're not getting paid, I can dip into that credit line of my own to keep you whole as my subcontractor partner. Now, I won't do that every time, but there are certain circumstances that do present themselves on a construction project, and we try to play equally as a team inside the walls as we do outside the walls. And furthermore, it really goes back to picking your clients better also. We, knock on wood, we don't run into this a lot where we're not getting paid, because we're very selective about who we enter into contracts with on the ownership side. And if, it goes back to what we talked about before. If you don't fit our values and our vision as an owner, we probably aren't the right team to partner up with. And that helps to alleviate that issue.
Yeah. All right. One additional question. This is a little different than money. We'll go to a different topic here. So what if your project manager or your superintendent is the problem? They're inexperienced. They're submitting things late. They're not managing the other trades. They're late. They're this, that, or the other. And it's really apparent to everyone else. But we as a subcontractor don't want to make those complaints because in fear they're going to make our life terrible. Or worse, we do bring it to you. You may not believe us. You have a conversation with them, and then they make our life terrible too. What is the best way to handle that when we, as a good sub, as a trade who's worked a lot of projects, feel as though that is the problem? What's the best way to handle that?
rip the damn Band-Aid off. Call me, come find me. We'll go to lunch. We'll go get a beer. You have to come to me because I rely on my trusted subs to be my eyes and ears in the field as much as I rely on my PMs and my superintendents. And I can't be in all places at one time. So if you're seeing something that you think is having a negative effect on the project, on the end result, or on even on relationships in the field, you got to just rip that Band-Aid off. You got to come to me. You know, I'm a very approachable owner in that sense. Will I take your word as gospel and run with it? Of course not. But will I take your word and then go talk to my people and you know, analyze what's going on here and work to get an amicable solution for everybody? Absolutely. And if that conversation results in one of my guys or my people being shitty now to you or your team in the field, well, then I have a problem internally, a big one. And that goes back to the core values conversation. And then it's a real easy thing for me to handle internally.
Follow-up question, that's actually my question. Is there anything you do, Matt, up front prior to a job starting or before there ever could be a problem to just sort of lay the ground rules of, hey, if anything needs to happen, or just give someone an impression that they can come to you or let them know in a transparent way in front of everyone? Or is there anything you do different or you'd suggest? That's
a great question, Scott. And to be honest, I've never even thought about doing that. I probably should. So, you know, in my case, it goes back to a lot of our team we've worked with for a very long time. So people just know me, they know how I operate, but you kind of just got my wheels spinning on how to convey that sense of urgency and openness to new trades that we work with. I'll be putting that on an agenda for a staff meeting. Well, it's interesting. Where it came from, the first time it ever happened, I'll tell you the story. It came out of basketball. Our coach in college, he had to go away in the middle of the season for a week. He had a personal matter he had to deal with. And we were middle of games, and we had practice, and we had assistant coaches, and we were all close with them. But our head coach was the guy. Like, it was clear he was there. Well, when he left, he brought everyone together and he said, these are my expectations of you all as players. And by the way, this is what I've told my coaches are my expectations of them. So when I get back, they're going to hold you accountable and you're going to hold them accountable. And this is the rules that we all try to operate under. This is our guidance. This is our company. This is what we believe, or this is our team. You know, this is how our philosophy is. And these are my expectations. He told us all from the beginning. So before he was gone, it was clear and it was said in front of everyone, and it really resonated with me. And I can tell you, it drove our behavior from a bunch of lunatic basketball players in their, you know, high teens and 20s. We definitely were there, and it was a great week. I remember, I'll never forget it. It was a great week, and the coaches were different. And it was from literally that one meeting conversation that he had had. I don't know. I thought about that while you were talking. I just thought about that story in my head as a conversation. It could be a cool way to do it. I'm sure you guys have lots of pre-game meetings and pre-cons and post-con meetings. So, well, that's what I was going to go with. You know, I think it's a great idea. Being as heavily rooted in pre-con as I am, I think you hash out a lot of that just through communication. You know, like I said, we don't go out and hard bid a whole lot. We prefer to stay, you know, underneath the radar, doing true design build projects where we negotiate a lot. So me personally, I'm very, very involved with all of my subs from a very early level, a very early conceptual point in most projects. So I am going to bring some of what you just said into my early communications, but I think that also tends to help with that, you know, we communicate so much and work so tightly together from a very early point in most projects that by the time we get to construction, most of that's already fleshed itself out. Cool. It's good. I think it'd be interesting. I'd love to, have you back on here and hear if that made any difference in the next month, but that's a cool way to do it. All right. One additional question came in specifically related to our webinar, and I'm going to read it because it's a little long. How can my firm, as a small disadvantaged veteran-owned small business, or other small businesses or minority businesses or women-owned businesses, get involved in the bidding process sooner? There's often not enough time between the receipt of solicitation and a bid date to dig into drawings and specs to determine the actual FF&E needs to offer a price. That's a loaded question. I mean, that's going back to hard bid jobs for one. How do you get involved earlier? There's avenues, there's BidNet, there's Construct Connect, there's that sort of service out there where you can be notified of open projects. I mean, I would take a twist to it and say, build the relationship with the GCs that you want to work with. And then when those opportunities come out, because we should be the ones that hear about it first in a perfect world. But when we get notified, then I'm going to go to my new FF&E supplier that I just met last week or that we've been chatting for the last 6 months. To me, that would be the best way to do it, is just foster that relationship first.
Stay front of mind. Let them know what the capabilities are.
Absolutely.
That would be my advice. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Well, Matt, I think this has been awesome. I really appreciate the time you spent today. I like how we went through these little 4 or 5 different sections, and I really like the concept of Ask the GC. So I'll definitely be putting it out there to folks to ask some questions or whatnot, and maybe we can create a little series of our own and get some advice and bring some others in too. But maybe it's giving me an idea now too of ask the sub. Maybe I should bring a sub on and create some GC questions and do the same thing.
I think that'd be a great idea.
Well, I appreciate everyone for joining us today. Thank you very much. Matt, I really am grateful for the time you've given us, not only today, but in previous ones, and your candor and genuineness. I think the information and questions you've answered can certainly help people come up with different and new approaches. And I just really want to say thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it a lot.
Absolutely, Scott. And thank you for having me on. I'm happy to talk about it. It's an industry that I love. I'm passionate about this. So any chance I get to run my mouth a little bit, I'm happy to do it.
Likewise. Thanks, everybody.